Hello, and today I'm going to be taking us through the Wolseley Rapid Estimate software. So what we're on at the minute is the home page of the system, where we would be able to see any of the existing projects down in the grid below. But what we're going to do today is we're just going to start a project from scratch. So I'm going to come up here to the new project button and give that a press, and now we have the different information for the job that needs to be filled in. The only mandatory field is the project code, but of course you are encouraged to use all of the other columns, whether that be for report purposes or just for your own reference. So I'm going to import an example of example job code and everything today. Now we can always come back to this at any given point and make any adjustments to this that needs to be made at all. So I'm just going to press the OK button, which is going to go through and create our project for us. Now this is straight away going to take us onto the Estimate tab. Now the Estimate tab can be used in one of two ways. We can simply use this as a pricing tool because we have the ability of inputting either products from our live database, or whether that be manually allowed for items as well. It also gives us the ability to create all of our section structure for the tender breakdown, which is this area here on the left. Or alternatively, what we can use this screen for is actually, once we've taken and done some live takeoff from a PDF drawing using the same items, that would all come in here and accumulate on screen, so we can go through and make any adjustments to the markup or anything else that needs to be done. Now I'm going to give us an example of both of those things today, but to start us off I'm going to move us on to the Takeoff tab, in which we're going to want to upload our PDF drawings onto the software so we can start to do the live takeoff. So the first thing we're actually going to want to do is upload the drawings onto our cloud platform. So what we're going to want to do is just come over here and give this little folder icon a press. And now, just to make a note, this can be done at any given point. You don't have to do it once you're inside of a project. It can be done straight away from the home screen. So I've clicked onto that and I've gone into my drawings folder, and what I can do in here is I can either create any new folders just to help me sort and organize things, or I can simply copy and paste my information in. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to minimize this software here, so that's kept it open, and here I can see my example drawing which I've prepared for us today on my desktop. So I'm simply going to right click that, copy it, and then paste it into here. Now that's actually going to upload that into our cloud environment for you. There we are, that's all done. So now I can simply shut this down and open my software back up. And then what we're going to want to do is actually add in the drawing or drawings, depending on how many you've uploaded. So I'm going to come up here to this Add Drawing button, which is going to allow us to add the drawing onto the particular project that we're on. So I'm going to click Add, and that's straight away taken us into our drawings folder, which we pasted the information in. Now, it's worth mentioning, like I said, if you did have multiple different drawings, all you would have to do is actually highlight and select all of the different drawings that are in here, and they will all be uploaded at once. But for today, I'm just going to upload the single drawing. So I'm just going to press the Open button. Now that's going to upload that into the project for us. There we go. And what we would be able to do, once again, if we had loaded in multiple different drawings, is we'd be able to come down here and click here, and we would see our multiple different drawings in here, and we would actually be able to flick back and forth between the multiple drawings. And we can actually add in any other additional drawings at any given point as well. And that can be done to any of the existing projects or the one that you're currently now in. Okay, so now that we've actually got the drawing on screen, just before we start getting into all of the takeoff and everything else that needs to be done, let's set the scale of the drawing. So it does say up here that drawing size is an A1, and if we come down here and we zoom in on the ledger, it says it is an A1 at 1:100. So that means it's a good chance that the scale that's been provided to us is correct, but you always want to double check this. So what I'm going to do is come up here and where it says none, click on the drop down and select my scale, which is 1:100. And then what I'm going to want to do is just double check that this is the correct scale. So I'm going to want to measure a known measurement. So whether you're lucky enough to actually get a scale bar, or if you're measuring a doorway, a ceiling grid, kitchen countertop, anything like that, whatever you prefer to do. So I'm going to come here onto this tool just here, which allows us to, which gives us, all of our different measurement tools. Now all I actually want to do is measure a linear length, so I'm going to select this option, which has now changed my mouse into a crosshair, so I know that I'm ready to actually do something on the drawing now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer on this doorway, just try to get as close and accurate as possible. There we go. And I'm going to left click at one side of the door, and I'm going to drag it over, and I'm going to left click at the other side of the door. And I'm going to finalize that with a right click. Now that I've finalized that, it's given me the door size of exactly 800 to 50 mil. So I'm quite happy with that scale and what that's produced. But for example, if that wasn't actually giving you the correct measurement of what you expected, what you want to do is actually come up here and click on this little cogwheel and the ruler tool. And now this will activate a tool called custom scale. So what this allows us to do is actually select our first point, which is going to be one side of the door again, and then select our end point, which is going to be this side of the door. Left click that again, and now it's asking us what that distance should be in millimeters. So if I input 850, we can see it comes out to exactly 1 to 100. Now, of course, you can actually make any adjustments to the scale. You can confirm with the information that you're happy with, or you could actually just go through and try a couple of different measurements to find out if you need to round the scale up or down if it is in a little instance like this. But we're quite happy with 1 to 100 being the correct scale. So I'll press the confirm button. Okay, so now that we've got the drawing now set up and ready to go, the one last thing that I would recommend that we should do before we start doing our takeoff, but it is not necessary to do this step, you can skip it if you wanted to, but that's to come over here to the section structures here on the left hand side. So we've currently just got one unassigned section. But what we have the ability to do is create multiple different sections with multiple different level subsections. So A being your main heading, and B being a subsection of A, C sub of B, and once again D sub of C. Now most of the time you'll probably find yourself only necessarily using the A's and B's, but using all of these tools does allow you to actually break up your tender in which way you seem best, or if your client has requested a particular type of breakdown, you should be able to do all of that on screen here as well. So just as an example for today, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click inside of my section here. I'm just going to show you a very basic example of what could be created. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to specify that this is on the ground floor, and I'm going to go to B plus, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add in my hot water service, and my cold water service. There we are. So now I have two different sections to store my different takeoff informations into. And what I have the ability to do once again is just press A plus, create the first floor, and repeat my process again of doing B plus hot water service B plus CWS. Alternatively, to actually speed up that process a little bit if you wanted to, once you've actually made the ground floor, you could just go into the manage section option. Let me just remove this section here with the minus symbol. Yep, and that removes it. And what I'm going to do is simply right click the ground floor, and I'm going to duplicate that section structure like so, which is obviously a lot faster if there's going to be a lot of floors that you need to make up. And there we go. Now you just press OK, and that will refresh on your screen here. So that gives you a nice comprehensive breakdown. Now hopefully from my little example that I've given today, it does sort of give you the idea of the different section structures that can all be created exactly how you need it to be. And don't worry if any information is placed into the wrong section. It is very easy for you to move that information out if that's done so, which is simply done within the manage section screen, but I'm sure I'll show you that as we get a little bit further along in the video. Okay, so now we've actually got on to wanting to start our drawing. So what we're going to do is decide where it is that we are going to be starting from, and I'm going to select the fact that we're starting from this riser point here. So what we're going to want to do is actually go through the software and select what item it is that we want to be doing. Now we have two different ways that this can be done. Initially, you can do it yourself through using these green tools here, or I'll refer to them as the takeoff tools, which are manually inputted items. So for example, if I click on the length takeoff, I could input the description of what we need, which is 30mm steel tube. 32mm steel tube, select what line color I'd like to use, the thickness, the fact that it's a standard linear measure, I'm not measuring, an area measure or volume or anything like that. I can include slope angles if that is applicable as well, and then I can simply press start, and then I could actually go through and do my various different measurements this way. But the only obviously downside of this is the fact that I would have to go off and find the information of this, which doesn't really seem like something that's worth doing, considering if you come over here to the blue one and you press your add item, you get the entire Wolseley database available to you. So what we've got up here is actually live pricing. Okay, so we'll go to what does that mean. So we have the live price checking, which allows the software and Wolseley's database to effectively be linked directly together, and it can then show you the most up-to-date trade and most up-to-date costs, so your most up-to-date costs, and it's going to highlight that in green when it's done so. Obviously, considering we're looking at the entire database here, it's you can't necessarily expect it to show that information up straight away, but if I show you, for example, as we start moving through the database, so if I go to pipe fittings and valves, let's say I wanted to go look at copper tube. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to look for Pegler, and then I'm going to go for copper tube, and there we are, and I'm going to go to copper tube table X. Now this is giving me the green icons, which is obviously giving us the live prices, so we know that these are the most up-to-date that they can be for yourselves. And what we'll soon actually have available to sort of link in with this is actually the stock availability for these different items, and actually eventually making it so you can do direct orders from the system as well. Just so we can carry on what we're doing today, then I'm just going to move up and actually start doing the takeoff. So what we're going to want to do this time is actually come up to our chorus. There we are. And then I'm going to pick my steel tube, and then what I'm going to want to do is select which one I need. So I need screwed medium, and then I can go through and then select my different size, and straight away I need a riser, so I'm going to select my riser icon. Now I did actually notice from a moment ago that the pixel width of 10 was a little bit high, so what I'm going to do is just lower that down a little bit on screen before we do that, sorry. So I'm going to change that to 6, and now I'm going to press the start button, which then allows me to simply just drop in my riser and then right click to say that I'm finished, and as we can see there, that's input me in 3 meters. So I'm simply going to press my plus icon, which remembers exactly where we are, and I'm going to press the start button now because I want to use the actual linear aspect of it, not count the risers, and I'm going to left click from my start point, left click into my bend, and then go all the way down here to the T, left click again, and then because we have a change in size, I'm now going to finalize that with a right click. Now as you can see, that's now allowed me the 3 meters for the riser, and then 2.5 meters to go from there to there to there. Once again, if I needed to actually do another riser count to allow for that set piece, I could just press my plus icon, click the fact that I would like a riser, adjust it down from 3 meters to whatever you believe would be suitable, and then just do another stamp. Okay, so that's absolutely brilliant. It goes through, it will take off all of that, and when you move on to the estimate page, is actually going to combine all of that into one set of meterage, show you the unit cost for it, and then actually show you the allocated time. And then depending what you'd want your hourly rate to be, I have an example of 28, will actually then create you a site installation cost for this as well. But then what we can actually do to sort of expand off this and make this even better is we can actually, if we go back and we just remove this takeoff, which is simple as just clicking on it and then hitting the little trash can and then saying, yes, I would like to delete it. And it removes that off the screen. So what I'm going to show you now instead of add item is actually add assembly. So what these are is a combination of multiple different items selected from out of the database, all combined together to actually allow for things as you're going along. So for example, we can use the steel pipe and hanger, so it can actually allow for the bracketry, and it will also do things like automatically detect the change in direction and allow multiple different bends for you. So once again, I'm going to go through and just select that different item. Now, I believe this one was under crane, just for the case of the fittings. And we are going to want the mild steel pipe and hanger. Here we are. And here we are once again. Now, you can always highlight one, press the assembly properties to actually go through and see the multiple different items which are set up. With all the different allowances. That's what the quantities are for, so it allows the right amount of material at the right point, and obviously we can see there it's going to input the bends for us as well. So I'm going to use this instead. So I'm going to press, once again, we're going to do the riser trick with 3 meters, press start, and input that there, right click, and repeat the process again. Just like in the database, it remembers exactly where you are, so now I can press the start button and repeat the process again, left, left, left click, finalize it with a right click. And now if we actually go look at the estimate tab, Oh, so not all prices are live in the system. Do you want to recalculate the projects to bring all the prices up to date? Yes, I would. Okay, that's now recalculated that for us, and it's made sure that those prices are now up to date, which is absolutely perfect. So now that I bring this up, what we can see in here is we can actually see a complete different build-up of the multiple different items that we have in there, and I have some rather expensive bends which I need to go and look at. But other than that, it's actually brought together all of the different materials to exactly how I would want it to be, including all of my site installation time. And of course, we have the ability of viewing that either just as a one-line item if we would prefer to do so, or we can simply look at the breakdown of the different items with a simple click. Okay, so now let's move back onto the takeoff stage and carry on with the process of what we would do next. Okay, so what we're going to want to do is say that we're finished with the 32mm. So we're going to go back onto the assembly screen, and then we're going to simply move down to the next set of pipe. Now I'm going to go for the 20mm and go left, so I'm just going to press start. And what I'm going to do is now left click and left click to as far as I can see. Now, this is to do with a little bit of control and moving around on the software. So you've got two options to be able to sort of carry on, well, three options in a sense. What you can either do is you can use your slide bar down here and carefully select it and drag yourself along to exactly where you need it to be. Alternatively, you could have zoomed out and then use the wheel and use your pointer to select where you would like to zoom to and roll the mouse wheel towards the monitor to move in there. Or what I would personally recommend that you do to actually move around easier on the drawing is actually push and hold the mouse wheel down if you do have one, which should then end up looking like this. So now you can now safely drag yourself around the drawing and use the sort of like a panning tool ability to move exactly where you would like to be. So I've just right clicked in there to finalize the fact of that's where I'd like the 20mm to go to. So I'm going to select the 15mm and I'm going to show you that movement tool again. So I'm going to press the start button, carry on from here. So left click from the T, left click into the bend, and then I'm going to hold my wheel down and drag myself up the screen all the way up to our rad. Left click, and now finalize that with a right click. So I personally like the wheel a lot because I personally think it allows you to sort of just move around the drawing a lot more smoothly, and it just feels a lot more fluid with actually when you're coming around and doing your takeoff, and it stops any accidental takeoff being done, which if it is done you can simply highlight it and delete it, or simply just come up here and press either your undo button or your redo, depending on what you need to be done. So just to finish off this takeoff then, I'm going to left click there, left click to here, hold the mouse wheel, drag myself over, take it to the end, left click, finalize that with a right click, and now simply come back here and proceed to do the branch. So left, left, and then finalize that with a right click again. Okay, and as you can see with all these different circles that have started to appear, that's actually where it's allowed multiple different bends for me, where the software has detected a change in direction. Okay, and what else we have the ability to do, when we actually, when we click on one of the lines that we've done, we can see our multiple different points. So you can see the white circles here being used as the main points of where we've gone to. And if we've slightly gone off, you have these yellow icons which you can use to create brand new pivot points for yourself. So I've done that incorrectly, so I'll move that and I will undo what I've just done. And I'll try that again. So I'm going to click here. Oh, there we are. I grabbed it a little bit that time. Let me try show you here again. So if I pull that back out, that gives me a new pivot point. I grab the left, and that will now create me another pivot point. So this can be really helpful sometimes if you are slightly out, or if you'd like to just sort of move it around a little bit, then you of course have that ability. Sometimes you might find actually when you click on these that you find these pointer anchors a little bit too big. If you do, simply come up here to your cogwheel, give that a press, and you have the ability to change these anchor sizes. And you can move this down to something a lot more smaller, and you can actually come back through and you can change your different line colors if you wanted to as well. And you can also lock this into position so you don't accidentally drag it out like I did a moment ago. And one of what I think is personally the best functionalities is the ability to change how transparent the lines are. So if it is quite a busy drawing that you're dealing with, you have the ability to sort of make these lines a little bit more transparent, just so it's a lot easier to deal with. And as we can see there, my anchors are a lot smaller now, so they're not taking up the entirety of my screen. So that's more of a preference thing of making it so the software works exactly how you would like it to be. But as you can see, it all slowly comes together with your linear measures that you would do, and then the only things that is necessarily left for you to do is actually go around and count up your additional fittings, such as the T's and the radiators, multiple different valve sets. So to find in a T, what we'd want to do is actually go back to the database option, find the manufacturer in which we could get the T supplied from. So I'll go for Crane, black malleable, and what I can actually do if I wanted to, rather than using this, I could just use my search bar here and I could write in T, which is now going to show me all of the various different T's which are available. So we need a 15 Crane black T, that's perfect. I'll press start, I'll allow for one of those just there, and that's a 15 2020, so that one is a little bit different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click to finalize the 15mm, click back in here again, and then simply just look for the 20mm T again. So T 20mm, oh sorry, that was writing 30mm, 20mm, there we are. Straight the way it's on there. The size before, like I said, was a little bit big, so I'm going to quickly just lower that down now, and then what we can do is we can just drop that in. Now I know that is just a 20mm equal T, but you do have the ability to find all of the 20, 15 by 15 and all the various different size combinations that are available to you, depending on how you actually like to do your takeoff as well. And things for like your radiators and your valve sets, you do of course have those multiple different items available to you here on the left. For example, I can go here into the radiators and you can see you've got Quinn, Stelrad, and Mason, sorry. So you can come in here and select the multiple different ranges which are available, or you can simply use your product codes, or you can search for the item by description, like obviously as I just demonstrated. And these radiators or anything else that is effectively a unit on the method type gets inputted exactly the same as we did with the T. You select what you would like to start with, and then you simply go around and you left click to where you would actually like one of these icons to be. Now one thing that I could recommend for you to do is actually when you go around and doing this, rather than what I've done using the green, the same color which I've done my linear takeoff in, is actually change the color of the items just to make it easy for you when you go around and count. So this would be the sort of same, that would be a similar sort of scenario that you'd like to do with any of your valve sets or anything like that. I'd recommend perhaps going around and doing those in a different color, so then you can easily tell that you've allowed for both the radiator, the valve set, and all of the fittings. Easily by just reviewing the colors that are on screen. But once again, that is a preference to each user and how you would honestly prefer to do the takeoff. Now just on the subject of the radiator valve sets, what you do actually have the ability to do as well is you do have the ability to create your own assemblies. So a good example of that might actually be a radiator valve setup, which you could create that would have the multiple different items, TMVs and lock shields and everything else in which you'd need. So rather than having to do multiple counts at every radiator, you would just allow for one setup of each. So then that's all you'd be allowing for, is the actual radiator itself and a complete setup, which of course is going to save you a lot of time in the long run, as once you've created this assembly for this particular project, for example, that is something you're going to have available in your in any future projects that you work on, and of course that's still going to be affected by all of the live pricing directly from Wolseley themselves, just to actually cut down the amount of time it takes you to go through and actually do these takeoffs. Okay, now for example, earlier on I said if you put all of your items into the wrong section, so I'm going to say that perhaps we've done that a little bit just for the purpose of showing you guys how to do it. So I've got the ground floor and I've been inputting all the information into the hot water service, which is actually why we've got this amber color, and the cold water service is red as because it is empty. So what I can do is I can go into my manage sections button, I can go into my hot water service, select the items in which I'm saying I've not actually put into the correct section. Now that could be multiple lines. I'm just holding control down to select these lines, just the same as you'd find on any Windows machine. And then all I'm going to do is simply right click these lines and cut it, and then move down to the next section, right click and paste it in as new, and that's now moved the information across for me. Now, another nice little feature whilst you're in here, just for the sake of it, this once again, it's not something you have to do, but it is encouraged just to make your life easier. Once you've finished a particular section, you have the ability to right click it and change the section status of it to green for complete. Now, the purpose of that is it gives you this nice little green tick box just so you know that everything has been finished within that section, just as a bit of a sanity check, really. It doesn't actually affect anything on the estimate page or affect your sections in any way, other than give you that visual reference. Okay, so what you would realistically do now at this stage, if we're saying we have completed this drawing that we're on, we would simply go down to the drop down menu and then we would simply switch over to the next drawing, and then we would repeat the process with putting in the various different section lines into by inputting the various different takeoff lines into the sections in which we've created it over here on the left hand side. And when you do actually change drawing, the sections will all stay there exactly the same, and you won't see the various different takeoff lines that you've done on your previous drawing, just to keep things nice and tidy for you. But when you actually move over onto the estimate tab over here, this is actually where you would see the various different drawings split out, and it's showing you the different items on screen and where they and what drawings they've all come from. Now, when you're actually producing any reports on this, you do actually have the ability to adjust how you'd like this all to be. Now, all of that is actually done up here in your main sort of cogwheels in your main settings. If you actually wanted any of that to be adjusted, that is all on, my apologies, on the estimate tab here. See, for example, I can change it to sort everything out with the entire project, either or with my section breakdown, or with the section breakdown and including the drawing breakdown. Now, do bear in mind that all of this information, all of that sorting method, will adjust all of this information live on screen, as well as adjusting any of the information that can be produced through the estimate report section over here as well. Okay, so now we've moved back onto the estimate tab. As we can see, we've got the accumulated amounts that we've taken off on our drawing live, and we do of course have the ability to add in any additional items in which we wanted to add in. So for example, I know that all of the takeoff in which we've done was all done in a flow and return. So what I actually have the ability to do is I can go back into the manage section. I can find all the various different items I have taken off except for my radiator. Simply right click that and hit duplicate, and how many copies of this would I like, implying there could actually be, you know, multiple different runs, not just flow and return, but I just want the one copy. So I'll press OK, which has now duplicated all of the information other than my radiator there. And I'll press OK, and there we are, and that's now changed all the information on screen for me. So now I have successfully actually allowed for the flow and return quite easily. There is other methods that you could do with that, such as build up assemblies with flow and return already built into it, for example, and a bunch of other different options. But once again, that's a personal thing, but you can discuss that more with us directly if you want a better way of being able to take off flow and return. But what else that we can do here in the estimate tab, other than obviously add in any additional items that we may need, which is simple as clicking on the add item, finding the item in which you would need, simply going to the quantity box and inputting how many you want and pressing add to the estimate. But if you'd like to come out of this screen, simply just come up here and press the X button there at the top. And there we are. Now, like I said previously, this is an accumulated quantity with the most up-to-date costings that have come directly from the Wolseley price files. But what I want to discuss a bit more is the site labour column over here. So we've gone through and we've inputted the installation times for each of the relevant different items, but you do obviously have the ability to actually go through and change what these unit times are. If it's just an item that's been added directly out of the database, you are simply able just to click on it and then overtype the information and press enter, and you'll see as soon as I do this will change from being 126 to, there we are, 168. If you wanted to adjust the accumulated amount built up from a particular assembly, you're going to have to open that up and then adjust the various different items within that to actually get it to where you would need it to be. So for example, if I needed to lower this a little bit, I could lower this to 0.2 and also lower this one to 0.2. There we are, that's now brought down the total accumulated amount for my particular 15mm assembly there. Now all these costings that are being created, I did briefly mention it before, it's all done from the hourly site rate which has been inputted in down here. I've inputted in an average of £28. For example, you can easily go through and you can adjust that to actually whatever you would need that to be, and then that should then adjust the information on screen for you as soon as you click off of the line. So it did it then. If I change it back to 28 and then click off the line, and you'll see it update live on the screen there as well. So that's how you can get the system to completely give you your utter breakdown of your quantities, materials and site installation costs. But what you can do to just take it a little bit further than that is you can actually apply your various different markups. Now there is two ways of doing this. You can either mark up the totals column here, this one over here on the right, if you would like to mark up the material and your site labour by the exact same amount. If you would prefer to do them differently, so you would like a different markup on the material than you would on your labour, so it uses the markup columns of the two relevant categories, then all you want to do, instead of using total markup here, you want to use your material markup and site labour markup. Now whichever way you go for is more of your personal choice. Simply write in, once again click off the line and you'll see that update there on your screen, and I will do the labour to 30 for example. Oh sorry, the material at 30 and the labour at 20, sorry, my mistake. So we can see there it's actually worked out all of our cost with a markup of 30%, take us to 549, and then it's done the same thing over here on the labour as well. Now you do actually have the ability to go in on each line and adjust that to what you would want it to be on a line by line basis, if that is something in which you want it to do. Same thing can be done on the site labour, and you can also either decrease everything or uplift everything by a little bit more if that's something you wanted to allow for. Let's say for example of inflation, then you can allow an additional 5% over here on the markup, the marked up versions of the costings, just to allow for that little bit extra if that's something in which you wanted to do. Once again, this is all completely up to you and how you would like to use this screen. And there's a couple of extra things you can do as well over down here on the bottom left, such as being able to add in prelims, provisional sums and subcontractors. To do any of these, simply just click on the little cogwheel and you have the ability just to write the information in and the amount, and you actually have the choice of whether you'd like to apply a markup to this or not, and it will tell you what the total is. And because this is actually prelim, you do have the ability of spreading the total cost of the prelims equally out between the various different items that you've got built up within this particular project, which is actually something really nice and it's easy to do. The fact if you can turn it off on a click of a button is absolutely brilliant. So once you've actually gone through and you've done all your various different markups and you're completely happy with all of the information that you've got and you want to produce some form of documentation for this, like I've been saying before, go up to your estimate reports, give this a press and you'll have multiple different options. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select two examples. So I'm going to select a tender summary and a schedule of rates, and I'm just going to hit the generate button. Obviously you can see that there's a lot of different options in here, also, including the ability to create your own documentation and be able to pull this up for each project and make any adjustments to it that you'd like to as well as actually making it so the deciding on how the assembly is going to be displayed, whether you'd actually just like the assembly description with the breakdown, so a little bit like when you hit the plus button on the estimate screen, or if you would just like to see all of the individual components without the assembly's description at all. So once again, that might depend on your scenario or your preference. So I'm just going to go for the assembly's description only, and I'm going to hit generate now. So that's going to load up the first one for us, which is the tender summary, which you can see here is actually giving us our different sectional breakdown, as well as giving us our drawing breakdowns as well. So we can see the total amount for each drawing within that section. And then same things happening then for the CWS, and then we're actually getting the project total there as well. And obviously if we look up here to the top, this is actually why we'd encourage you to input the client name, because as you can see you can get the information to be displayed there. And what you can also do up here in this cogwheel settings is you can actually input your company information, so this can be filled out all here. Now when this all comes together, this looks really nice. Now, what you have the ability to do on any particular report that gets generated is you can export that back to your computer. Now, you can have that as a PDF, CSV, Word, or Excel, depending which file format you would like it to be. So I'm just going to go for the PDF. And all you have to do is hit the Export Report button. Now, that's going to come up in our last saved location, which for our instance is the drawing folder. And I do have the ability to create any new folders and do any adjustments which we would like to do, just the same as we did earlier on, as well as being able to rename the file. But for the sake of what we're doing now, I'm just going to hit Save. And this is now going to pop up and ask us, do we want to open our cloud folders file so we can copy and paste the information back, or would we like to close it? What I'm going to do is I'm going to close that and then close down this particular report and load up the next one, which is our schedule of rates, which as you can see is doing exactly the same as the tender summary was, giving us the nice comprehensive breakdown of our different sections and then within the different drawings. And then it's giving us a line by line breakdown for with the different quantities, a supply and fit rate, and then what the total cost would be. Then obviously we can see it's giving us then the total cost of the subsections and then giving us the actual total cost of the project itself. So now I actually want to export this report as well, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to save it in the same location, and this is the reason why we have the option to close or open folder, so you can save all of the different different reports in which you'd need, and then you can simply press the open folder button and then copy and paste them all in one go. So now I'm simply just going to cut this, I'm going to minimize the software, close down this report, close down that little screen, and then minimize the software and just simply paste this onto my desktop. So now I can see that I've got both my reports exactly where I'd need them, and I can now move them to exactly where I'd like them all to be stored. And then all we do is we simply come back onto the software, and now that we have finished and we would like to close the project down, you simply come back and you press the Save Project button, which is going to save all of the progress in which you've done. So you can always come back and look at this at any given point. But now, one of the most important functions of this, now whether this was done when you exit, it will always ask you this as a bit more of a safety precaution. But basically what I'm saying is what you can do when coming back to existing projects. Now that doesn't matter if it was a day ago or a week ago or a month ago. You always have the ability to come back and edit the particular project in which you've been working on, or the one that you've perhaps already submitted. But the system is always going to give you this prompt when you load in, that not all the prices have been up to date, that not all the prices in the system are up to date, and it's giving you the ability to recalculate this project based off of today's current prices. Now this is obviously dependent of the situation. If you have an agreed upon amount for this particular project and you would just like to generate some additional reports with it, the answer would be no. If you're coming back in to reevaluate the project, bringing it up to today's latest trade prices, then the answer would be yes. So this is obviously something you do need to be a little bit careful of, but it is one of the most best features about the system is the fact that it can instantaneously recalculate all your prices up to today's current date, with just a simple yes or no scenario. And there we are. Now everything has fully been updated, and we know that the prices in which the system is using to allocate to our multiple different counts that we've done is the most up to date that it can be. Now, if you do need assist with any of this, please just come up here to our support button and feel free to get in contact with us in whichever way that you seem fit. Thank you. Bye.